All right. Tonight is Thursday, February 21st, 2019. This is the Wenham Board of Selectmen meeting. It is an off-cycle meeting for us. We have some extra meetings in order to do all of the business that we need to do running up to town meeting, which we'll have an announcement about in a minute.
It's going to be a busy agenda,
It's going to be. So we opened this meeting tonight at 6 o'clock. It was called to order. We immediately went into executive session and are now out of executive session, back in open session. And since the room is completely empty of residents that would make comments, I'm going to skip right over public input. Unless Thomas wants to say something, but I think he's busy back there. And move directly to announcements, which I think, I guess before I do that, I should say that
you don't have the pleasure this evening.
No, I don't. John Clemency and I are here. Jack is unable to attend, so it'll be the two of us and our town administrator, Peter, and Catherine Tinsley taking minutes tonight. So, announcements, John.
All right. Well, we've got a lot coming up, as Catherine was just saying. One of the first things is that there's a Board of Selectmen, the warrant hearing, which is a precursor to the town meeting. So we'll review the entire body of the town meeting questions and recommendations at the warrant hearing. That's going to take place at the Bessie Bucher Elementary School in the multi-purpose room on Monday, April 1st at 7 o'clock. So be there, ask your questions, prep us with it if you can't be there, send us a note. We'd like to make sure that your concerns and questions are asked and responded to by the Finance Committee or whoever else it is appropriate to answer to it. Following up, on April 6th at 12 o'clock, the Wenham Village Improvement Society is going to be hosting a luncheon, as is done every year for I don't even know how many years. It's probably into the decades now.
Yeah.
At the Bessie Bucher Elementary Middle School multi-purpose room. So that's at 12 o'clock, and that's just prior to the town meeting, which will take place in the adjoining room at the auditorium. And then the annual town election is being held at the town hall on Thursday, April 11th, from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. As of today's deadline, we've received at least one set of papers for all open offices in the town of Wenham, with the exception of school committee, and no, that is not correct because that has now been.
Well, we don't technically know the school committee. So from the town clerk's point of view, she doesn't know the school committee, so that's probably why that's written that way.
I kind of know.
Yeah, well, we'll know for sure tomorrow.
Correct.
All right. Okay, voters must be registered by March 15th to vote in the annual town election, so please contact the town clerk's office for any information you may need on absentee voting or anything else to do with voting. All righty.
Great.
That's all we got.
Peter, do you have a report tonight, since we've been meeting every week?
Nothing to report that's not on the agenda tonight or in our next couple meetings.
Yes, okay. So we'll skip, I have no report either. We will skip to the consent agenda, which this evening includes a number of minutes, both open session and executive session. It includes approval of American Diabetes Association Tour de Cure race. And
that's again,
Hamilton
man, every time I turn around, it's there again.
Friends of the Arts, Melanie Miles. Is there anything, John, that you would like to exclude from the consent agenda, or are you happy to vote all of those together?
No, it looks appropriate. I've reviewed it, so.
Okay, so
go right at it.
We'll go right at it. I move to approve all items in the consent agenda as presented, with the executive session meeting minutes of December 4th and December 11th to be held until further notice, and the executive joint session joint with CPC minutes from January 15th. This has to be released, but we don't have a signed. We haven't finally executed the purpose of that discussion, I don't think,
The
grant agreement.
the grant agreement with the museum.
Mm.
I believe we have a hard copy
I mean,
signed
they
back.
have,
What's that?
from them.
I believe we got our copy back.
Okay,
Yeah.
so then, that executive session joint with the CPC meeting from January 15th to be released. Is there a second?
I would second that motion.
Are there any comments, changes, corrections, additions?
No.
Okay.
Jack does a pretty thorough job.
Yeah, well, he
He's
doesn't-
told me numerous times how much time he spends on them, so
Which, well,
that's a good thing.
won't get into it. I think they go to him in pretty good shape mostly. That being the case, we're ready to vote. All in favor of the consent agenda?
Aye.
All two of us vote in the affirmative. Okay, well, this is like, I'm moving right along. Under new business, the first item that we have is John's,
Yes.
and it is placing adoption of MGL Chapter 59, Section 5, Clause 41st C and a half to
Hold on.
April 2019 ballot. Which
Jammed
we
it right
actually
in there.
talked about this before, so it's not going to be completely unfamiliar,
Right.
but
Yes.
it's John's item.
So
introduce.
I will read the motion, and then we can discuss it. I move the Board of Selectmen place the adoption of Mass General Law, Chapter 59, Section 5, Clause 41st C, 1/2,
That's it.
on the 2019 annual town election ballot in the form of the following question: shall General Law 59-5, Clause 41st C 1/2, granting real estate property tax reduction to qualifying senior citizens be accepted?
I'll second that motion.
All right.
So Peter can explain what it is.
Sure, yeah. We talked about this last week at the joint Finance
Right.
Committee meeting a bit. Just a refresher, this was on the warrant last spring. It was approved by town meeting. The process for approval for this local option is both town meeting approval and approval at the ballot. The high-level summary of what this means is currently we have clause 41st C, not the half,
Not the half.
which means that we grant abatements up to $1,000 to qualified seniors. And the income eligibility standards in the current program are very restrictive, $20,000 for single, $30,000 for married. And so what this would do is basically mirror the income eligibility standards of the state's senior circuit breaker program and reduce what was included in the warrant article. There are some different ways that the adoption, the local option adoption, can be modified. And so we reduced the age of eligibility down to 65.
All right.
And we set the percentage at 10% of the resident's home value for what the abatement amount would be. So it will vary depending on the resident's home value. It's meant to be progressive in that way, where the current program is a fixed $1,000 amount. We currently receive $4,000 in state reimbursements back. So the net impact on the overlay is $8,000. Under the new program, we've gone back and looked at about 5 years historical for what Wenham residents have been who've been eligible and who've received the benefit at the state level, to kind of benchmark where we anticipate to come in terms of an impact on the overlay if this were to be adopted. And looking at those historical averages and our median home values, our projections are that it will essentially increase the amount by about $67,000 or thereabouts, of abatements that would be received by eligible residents in town. So about 8, 10, 12 residents generally have taken advantage of the program here historically, and we're projecting 80 to 90 residents if it were to be approved at the ballot. And so we have, as we talked about last week, increased the overlay amount for FY20 in anticipation of this passing at the ballot in April. It's been for the past number of years at $135,000. Proposing to increase it to $195,000, so a $60,000 increase, with a mind toward recognizing that there has been some extra capacity in the overlay that we think can accommodate the other $15,000 or so that we're projecting.
Okay.
So this helps some of our seniors. and That's a wonderful
If these numbers
thing.
play out, it will help a lot more of our
Yeah.
seniors than
Yep.
it's able to help now.
You never know what a half can do.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're going to run out of spaces between the numbers.
So I,
That's fine.
no, I don't have any questions or concerns. I think this is a great opportunity, so I think we ought to.
And it's
put it
in
on the ballot.
recognition, obviously. I mean, the whole idea back when we were talking about this last year originally was in recognition of, the tax rate impact to seniors and
Yep.
especially seniors on a fixed income. And if we can
Incomes,
provide
yeah. some
relief, some
yes,
greater
help,
relief,
yeah.
Sure,
you know,
we should do it.
sounds like a good program, yeah.
And it has the added benefit of having already strongly, unanimously probably, passed through our town meeting. So it's certainly, we know that it's something that our townspeople want us to.
Yeah.
And we were clear in the commentary in the warrant book that there would be a financial implication.
Right.
That this wasn't something that wouldn't then have an impact, so.
And we were clear, I think, also that it required a ballot vote.
Yep.
People probably will have forgotten about that, but,
Oh, yeah, that's right, right.
so we just need to vote on that, I guess.
Okay. So it's been moved
Seconded,
and seconded, so all those in favor? Aye,
That would be the unanimous two again, Catherine.
thank you.
And moving along, John, the review of potential approval of a seller master services agreement is
Yes.
also yours.
All right. Again, I'll read the motion. I move to approve and execute the Acela Master Service Agreement as presented for the Shared Inspectional Services e-permitting platform.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. And
So just a quick background on this.
Please, Peter.
We received a little under $40,000 in Community Compact IT grant funding a couple of years ago now, for the initial setup and design, and some amount of training to transition to this new platform. So e-permitting, allows residents and contractors the ability to file things electronically. I think the big value for us is its internal data storage and aggregation capacities. And now that we've got the shared inspectional service program with Hamilton, will really help in terms of managing staff and operations for that. So Hamilton is coming in under our umbrella of the initial grant funding. So that was a benefit for them coming in the door. And, but the $18,000 a year expense and escalating 5% the next 2 years will be borne, will receive compensation from Hamilton for their share of that, so.
So it's included in the existing
So we,
IMA,
so
the umbrella of the
correct,
existing
so
IMA.
we have to budget for it on the expense side, but then we get it back on the revenue side through the IMA.
And it doesn't work without it, so it's, we don't have e-permitting without this.
Yeah, and it was, some real ancillary benefits for us in terms of upgrading from our current system, which is, you know, pretty dated at this point, and Hamilton has no electronic permitting system. So it's a big jump up for them, and the other benefit is that we're now rolling in on both the Hamilton and the Wenham side planning module so that the going through the land use process, it ties back all to that same address in terms of tracking those things. So real integration between inspectional services and planning, what gets approved by land use, CBA, planning board, Concom. So
that itself is a big help.
Yeah, and there's data migration as part of the original grant, which has been not the smoothest, but we've gotten there.
Data integration and smooth don't exactly. That's like an oxymoron.
But this is
grind the gears.
Yeah.
Yep.
So this looks, really boilerplate. This agreement. I presume if you found it necessary, council has seen it, but it looked.
Yeah, I think the more important thing on our end.
It's pretty small type too.
Well, it is.
The more important thing on our end was making sure, from an IT perspective, that it fit. With ours.
Would need, yes.
Yeah,
right.
so we checked with micro support. Hamilton checked on their end with IT. We actually made some adjustments to the agreement, including some bumping up the storage capacity. So
Good.
I think everybody's in a good place in terms of where it ended up.
All right. Any
No more
further?
questions? Nope.
All right. Then therefore, all in favor?
Aye. That would be
That's
unanimous.
unanimous.
Okay.
Nice.
And that is our new business
Thank you.
for tonight. I don't know of any other matters that have not been anticipated. We'll move on to old business. Not very old business, but old to us now. The first item is an update on the town administrator search process. And we have been moving this along with Peter's help, ancillary help, for the last, I don't know, has it been 2 weeks, seems like. We have identified 3 potential candidates to serve as an interim town administrator. All 3 have availability around the time that we would need one of them. They are planning, I think, have confirmed to attend an interview here, all 3 of them, this coming Monday night, which is February 25th, starting at 7:30 p.m. This, of course, will be an open meeting, but it will also be recorded, not live televised, because it's on a Monday night. So we encourage anyone who would like to see what happens and hear from these 3 candidates to tune in or certainly come to the meeting.
Yeah, please come here because this is all part of your government. So.
Right. And I will say up front that this is an expedited process in the sense that we have a lot of things to do and a limited number of meetings, with some members not having availability for all the meetings.
Town meeting coming
and
right
town
up.
meeting coming up. So the plan at the moment is to interview these 3 gentlemen. They are all gentlemen. Well, they're all men. This Monday, February 25th, 7:30, 8, and 8:30, and then potentially choose a candidate. Hopefully, actually, choose an individual that is acceptable to us the next night.
The following
at our
night.
meeting on Tuesday night, our regularly scheduled meeting, February 26th. And then to have that, potentially, again, we have to go through a contract negotiation process, even for the interim, and that contract would be hopefully available and completed by the first week of March. So the person would start sometime in April. Again, we have to finalize their exact availability and sync it as well as we can with Peter's leaving. The expectation is that this manager, an interim manager, would work somewhere between 25 and 35 hours a week,
Yep.
plus some meetings, Selectmen need
Yeah,
certainly.
yeah,
A few others. that-
need a few other meetings.
And we've also identified that the market rate for compensation for this work is $75 to $85 an hour. All of this, of course, is, subject to some negotiation and subject to one of these people, who all seem to be highly qualified. We'll know a lot more about them as we get information, that one of them is a good fit for us.
Right.
And we're very hopeful that that will be the case.
I have a brief question. Are there resumes on our website?
They're not, we will have them on the website on Monday night. We normally post the packets the night of the meeting. We do have they're not in tonight's packet because we didn't have them. But they will be in the packet for Monday night's meeting.
Okay,
Available
so
for everybody.
for those who would like to see the backgrounds of these folks, please keep in touch with either Peter, the town hall, us, or the
Yeah,
website.
there's very high-level summaries of their backgrounds in
Packets.
the
Packets, too.
today's packet, in the just quick memo.
And just as a clarification point, and to make it as clean as possible, if anyone in the community would like to communicate something relative to this meeting or these people, I think they should probably talk to Nikki, and Nikki will loop us in as
Yes,
possible. We'll try
perfect.
to not make it awkward for.
Because we want to hear from you folks.
Yeah.
It matters.
The second part of so that's the update on the interim town administrator. The second part of it is our process of hiring a new town administrator, our next town administrator, permanent town administrator. Peter's helped us again in writing a request for qualifications, so we have an RFQ that will go out to 3 firms, and then we'll get proposals from, hopefully, 3 of those consulting firms, and decide who we would like to bring in to interview. And right now, the schedule for those interviews, for the recruitment firms, is March 19th. And we're hoping at that time, on March 19th, to also be talking about, amongst the board, about the potential composition and charge of the screening committee. I think we talked last time about the fact that we wanted an interim. I should back up a little, that we wanted there to be a professional recruiting firm involved, and that we wanted there to be a screening committee. So we're kind of stepping through that. And hopefully on the 19th, we'll be able to at least talk about what the composition of that screening committee would be and what their charge would be, and also interview the potential candidates for the search firm. That's all I have on that.
Okay.
More to come.
Because I have 3 people already that's shown interest in wanting to be on that.
Yeah, so we, there are a lot of ways to constitute a search committee, having committed to one. We've done it probably different ways, and I think this board has to talk about how we want to do it. For instance, it could be all community members. It could include some representation from boards and committees in town, in addition to community members. So I think unless the 2 of you disagree with me, I think we need to just have a discussion about, so that we agree on
absolutely.
what
Yeah, no,
how
we
many.
need to think through the process of
would be.
how do we want to go about this all
Right.
together. I'm not convinced that we need a search firm. But that said, I do believe strongly that we need input from both the town folks and our department heads.
Yes.
So that's about the only sure thing
Yeah.
I'm saying at this
Yeah.
point.
And I think that as we get, when we structure the actual process with, I think, a search firm, we can structure it so that to be
Yeah.
sure that those things
Yeah,
happen.
absolutely.
Certainly
Yeah,
staff.
because this is a key position, has become more and more important as the time has gone on. I mean, I'm 12 years at it now, and the evolution of town management is not anywhere near when I walked in the door the first day and said, okay, so what's this all about? And boy, I see the complexity now, and, you know, we need not only someone who's capable, but also has a good fit from a personality point of view with the town employees and the town. Because we have a 375-year-old town.
We have a culture.
And that's right, there's a culture and a custom, and it doesn't mean that's got to dominate everything, but at
Right.
the same time, you can't be arbitrary to it.
Right. And not to preempt that discussion, but you made me think of when I said there, we've done this different ways.
Correct.
I think, although it turned out fine, one thing that I don't think we did enough of in our last search was to include the staff, department heads, in whatever form, I don't know how this looks, with the finalists. I think we didn't really give them an opportunity. And now, through some research, I've seen that there are various ways that could happen, probably, in my opinion, not on the search committee, but certainly as part of the process, so that they have an opportunity, as they will for this interim, to give us input on the finalists.
Well, that's why I think the interim is going to be very important to us, because we will want to see that kind of guidance. These three, from what I've seen so far, are all seasoned people who have served many communities at you know, probably some pretty high demands. You know, we want to learn from folks like that, because they're the ones out in the field doing it every day. You know, we don't do that. We haven't forgotten about you yet. We might miss you, but
We just have to keep moving forward in parallel paths here. So that's all I have. We have this update. These updates will probably continue fairly regularly on our
oh yeah, please,
on
yes,
our
we need to
town-
do that.
on our agenda, so that we can talk about things, and
Yeah.
also the community has a sense. And at some point, we will start something on the website. Right now, we don't really have much to put up there, but as we've done before, we'll have a TA search section of our website that people can go to find out where we are in the process, what the process is, et cetera, et cetera. That's, I think, a little ways down the road. Okay, anything more on that? So we
No.
have, I guess.
More to come.
More to
So
come.
stay in tune.
Stay
You know,
tuned,
So
yes.
if you can be here or watch Monday, do so Tuesday as well. And then going forward, we'll
Right.
also look for your input.
And we discussed briefly the idea of doing the interviews on Tuesday with our meeting. But Tuesday's meeting is a very, very, very heavy agenda. So as much as we, I think, want all of this process to be as transparent as possible, we also have to have a good town meeting.
Yeah.
So that's how we ended up with the interviews on Monday night.
I don't know why it took me this long to figure it out. Why is Monday's meeting recorded? Oh, conflict with Hamilton?
Hamilton Selectmen meet on Monday. Yeah,
Okay.
so.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah, but I don't know that that's, with the technology these days, I'm not sure that's a big delay. So we'll ask Peter to find out what that process is,
Okay.
and if it can be expedited, maybe there's a way that they can
Yep.
just get it up on quickly. Okay, letter H under old business is an update on Maplewood Senior Affordable Housing Project. I think we're going to see these on a fairly regular basis.
Yes.
From the litigation point of view, I just have a few points on that. We are still awaiting approval of the settlement documents, where we've been working off of term sheet, which, although legal, is very bare bones, and is an outline form. And so it is up to the parties that are litigating to flesh out how those terms that are in the term sheet will be implemented. Devil's in the details comes to mind on that. And the update from our council is that process is happening, but not yet complete. So we have not seen a final settlement document. So just so that we're aware, and we don't know what that.
The legal wheels turn slowly. almost
They do.
to torture.
Well, and, it's, the mediation, I think, is a process that by its definition happens quickly, because you have a hire a mediator for a day, and you come up with 12 things that you can.
And it costs everybody money.
Right, and you compromise on, but then the real work is the lawyers and their
Yeah.
clients, coming
Putting the
up.
language,
Putting the language together that everyone is comfortable with and can move forward in a way that decisions going forward can be made. So it's happening, but it's not there yet. And then if I understand this correctly, since we still have some litigation pending, ultimately the town will be involved in the final disposition of the other counts of the litigation. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, not a signatory on the settlement agreement
Right.
between the private parties, but there will presumably eventually be a joint motion for remand,
Right.
assuming that we get to that stage in the process, that the town would be a party to, because the town is in several ways a party to the litigation.
Still open.
And so then all three entities would have to file that joint motion to remand back to the ZBA for
In some form or another.
revised review by the ZBA of the comp permit application with the modified project.
Right.
Yep.
So that's where we are from a litigation point of view, moving along at litigation pace. The CPC has met on February 13th, I believe, and is going to, voted to recommend to town meeting that Harbor Light Community Partners, the applicant, receive $750,000 in CPC funds because of, as a direct result, I think, of the litigation we were just talking about. The motion comes with presently 5 contingencies, which include that there be a final ruling, settlement, and/or dismissal by the court with respect to the matters, that the ZBA issues a comprehensive permit, the project receives all other necessary permits, and the project to be undertaken is consistent with the binding term sheet, is what the CPC has put forward, and that the Board of Selectmen has verified that all of the aforementioned conditions are met. I think as we review this, and as we review this again with Town Council, there may be some additional conditions, because really, so topics for discussion there would be consistent with not the binding term sheet, but the actual settlement documents, and also perhaps some incorporation of the right of first refusal that we know would come with the sale of that property, and a few other things that may come up that the selectmen may feel are important in this particular motion. I think that's all I have on Maplewood.
I'd just say the one other piece is that we expect
Oh,
that we will likely receive
that's right.
the appraisal report from the Shannon Company sometime next week. The town had hired that independent third-party appraisal of the 4+ acres that would be acquired by Harbor Light for this development. So coming soon, not done yet, but working on it.
Right, thank you. I knew that's an important piece. Okay, so as we seem to end all of our meetings, we have, under old business, an FY20 budget update. I'm kind of hoping that these.
we have some new numbers?
Well, they're not new to us, because, I don't think, too new, because we've discussed all of this with the FinCom. I have to say, I'm sorry, this is your agenda item, but can I take it for just 1
I
second?
wish you would do, please.
It's actually yours.
Oh, it's mine? Oh, it's mine.
That's what I saw.
I'm so glad. Only because I wanted to say that I have the highest level of compliment for our Finance Committee. We met with them, I don't remember when that was, last week, but we had a very good discussion. I mean, we didn't agree necessarily, we didn't even make a million decisions, but I think it was a thoughtful discussion, and it seemed to me as if the people on the Finance Committee had a pretty good grasp, probably thanks to Patty and Peter as well, of what they, and others, of what they were looking at and what they were dealing with. And anyway, you know, I've been involved in a lot of conversations between selectmen and FinComs. Some of them are contentious, some of them are not. This was just, I thought, everyone being open to listen and hearing. So some of the things that I think Peter's going to review tonight, we did talk about. Maybe didn't finalize, because they got finalized a little later, but we did talk about them. So I've already, I think, emailed Alex Began and told him I thought that this committee has done a good job so far.
Yeah, and I think there's also a seasonality to them, where this is not their first year
Right.
anymore.
Right.
I mean, there was a lot of brand-new blood last year. So
So,
probably a lot more comfortable with the
yeah,
process.
I think so.
And they're all very thoughtful people, too, which is great.
So that's, sorry, by way of introduction to the introduction. And I'll
Yep.
let Peter handle the rest of the update as you would like.
Sure. So I think the most important piece is it's really just kind of following up on that joint meeting last week and then translating that to really where we ended up, what the bottom line impact is going to be relative to our Article 1 budget and the Article 3 school operating override and a couple other things that are all kind of interwoven there. So, you know, obviously the board had given some feedback in terms of the priority ranking for, we'll call them above level services, but I think we really came to agreement by the end of the session that that's a little bit misleading. These really, for the most part, with I think one exception, is really representation of level services. But these were, you know, in trying to really keep the budget as tight as we could, we'd called them out because they were, in some cases, in many cases, items that had been funded in other sources in prior years outside of the operating budget, and we're now looking at being folded into the operating budget. In other cases, they were unfunded Band-Aid kind of issues where we didn't really have a choice. There were compliance issues that we had to deal with. So after the board had given their feedback, the Finance Committee had a pretty extensive session a couple weeks ago now, 2 or 3 hours long, where they gave their feedback and then kind of talked through and came to consensus. And ultimately added a little over $107,000 in a handful of items into the town's FY20 operating budget. And just very quickly, those are increasing the finance assistant position by 3 hours a week for next year, increasing the hourly rate of the administrative assistant to the town clerk and the administrative assistant to the COA and the COA van drivers. They're bringing their hourly rates up to internal, external market rate. The addition of IT backup disaster and recovery services. And you can call it an increase, but really what it is level funding of the highway road capital line at $85,000 a year. So that was partially funded outside of the operating budget last year. And then 2 new capital costs, both for the fire department, new protective gear and new air packs. And this is a 2-phase, half in 20, half in 21. Total cost for FY20 between those two is $41,000. And then there'll be another similar, I think it was $40,000 in 21. So where that leaves us is the school operating override has basically moved from just under $560,000 to $665,000. And the one other thing that was talked about at length was loose leaf pickup.
You could have some practice explaining that if you'd like.
Yeah, I know, right? And ultimately, my understanding coming out of that conversation was that both the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen supported transitioning to bag leaf pickup, premised on the idea that at the very least, it would save $40,000 of direct expenses, because doing that would mean that the DPW would be freed up to take on most of the data collection and sampling under the new federal stormwater regulations, because those have to happen November, December, which is when they're doing the loose leaf pickup right now. So there'd be $40,000 in savings. That being said, there was some concern about, even though that was the policy direction of both the BOS and FinCom, some concern about cutting it out of the budget, and then a motion on the floor of town meeting looking to increase it if there was very strong support to maintain loose leaf pickup, which there may well be.
Could be.
And that then having to find $40,000 somewhere else where frankly we all know there isn't anywhere else that really could absorb that kind of impact, because it would have to come from somewhere. So right now the budget does not include that $40,000 in projected savings. It's budgeted as if we're going to do loose leaf pickup. And again, my understanding is that on town meeting floor, there'd be a motion to reduce those expense lines by the $40,000, a brief presentation outlining why, what the cost impact would be, and then see where it goes.
Well, the stormwater cost center.
Yep.
That's in the budget already?
It's in the budget, and we've kept it in the budget at $50,000.
It has to be done, so whether we're doing part of it or not.
Right.
Right, but if it would, that would be the line item that would be
It would be some
reduced.
relief because of.
Because we'd be doing it in-house.
Correct.
So there's all kind of offsetting costs, $12,000 or $13,000 cost for Casella to do the twice around town bag leaf pickup, which is what they do in Hamilton.
How much again?
$12,000 to $13,000.
Okay.
So 2 rounds. But then there's about $12,000 or $13,000 in savings on the town side for fuel and equipment and
I know equipment repair under those conditions is pretty tough.
Yes, and some third-party landscapers that we have to hire because we're doing loose leaf pickup to do cleanup of cemeteries and the parks in the fall. So those kind of net each other out, and the bottom line is there'd be about $40,000 in savings in that. The stormwater compliance expense would drop from about $50,000 to $10,000 because Weston and Sampson, the engineers, would really just be handling the administrative elements, and we'd be doing most of the field work.
Yeah. Okay.
So that piece of it, if I'm understanding correctly, we're trying to be transparent so that people understand what this line item is and what they're actually voting for or wish to vote for in a way that makes it straightforward to implement from a on-town meeting floor kind of situation.
Yeah, the idea being we didn't want to cut that line item without any explanation and have it be a surprise come November that there wasn't loose leaf.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
That would,
No, that wouldn't be cool.
And just a quick question relative to that whole thing.
Yep.
So the spreadsheet that we all opined on, or gave our priorities for, I just counted them, 18 items on them. Of the 18 items that, we could call them whatever we want, of those 18 items, it's only 7 of them actually made it into the budget, if I counted right.
Yeah, there's about $350,000 of total ask in that, of those 17 items. So about a third of them were actually funded.
So on the chart that we have, the $107,078 refers to those things that we have I won't say approved is not really the right word, but we have chosen to include in the budget. Yeah, although all the items are on the chart.
Yep.
They add up to 300 and something, if you
Yep.
add all the items.
And then the one other thing, there was a fair amount of conversation about a couple capital items, and there was just some follow-up that I had on that. The first was the backhoe.
Oh, right.
And, ultimately, Bill really felt like that was something that should be replaced this year, but recognized, the constraints that we were working under. And he did some follow-up. And in terms of a backup plan, if we were to have some catastrophic failure there, which it's impossible to say if we actually would or not. But if we would, Hamilton does have 2 backhoes, so we could potentially work something out with them on a short-term basis, a couple months. Or, a one-off.
Well, that's good.
Project
That's
need.
the type of creativity that,
Yep. Or we could also rent, or basically rent one for $3,600 a month. So we wouldn't be stuck to the point where things couldn't get done.
you're not without options.
Yep.
Thank you.
And then
That works.
the other piece was talking about the Council on Aging roof, and ultimately, after talking to Bill, he said he felt comfortable waiting until FY21 to do that.
Thank you.
And that wraps up that piece of the discussion. I think the one other important thing that has been talked about on and off again was the concept of the Special Purpose Stabilization Fund, and whether that made sense to look at as an option to, specific for the school enrollment shift costs. And after our joint meeting, and after talking to Patty a little bit more about it, I think probably isn't the best fit. I mean, I think we all agreed, coming out of last week's meeting, it's a little unwieldy to understand, let alone explain.
Yeah.
And so the sell to town meeting, could be complicated. And so I think it really needed to have demonstrable benefit
Right.
in order to use some of that political capital. And so, and in looking at, the year-over-year enrollment shift increases that we anticipate seeing in some form or fashion, hard to say exactly what they're going to look like, but they're not going to be insignificant or incremental. I think this model, this mechanism probably doesn't meet those needs. So fine for some circumstances around funding capital and that kind of thing, but probably not for the enrollment shift.
Yeah. I think that makes sense.
Particularly because we'd be entirely dependent on an operating override to fund it, as opposed to infusing it with, the stabilization fund with free cash or some other funding source.
Right.
That's normally how these are kind of given a jump start, is there's some one-time funds that are appropriated to the fund, and then there may be an operating override that goes along with it to kind of sustain it.
That isn't really the situation here.
Correct.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah,
And
that-
so those were kind of the high-level outcomes, implications of last week's discussion. Obviously, we're getting up on the time when the budget needs to be finalized.
Yeah.
And so I would expect that's probably going to happen next Tuesday night. Sorry, go
I
ahead.
was going to say, to that end, the FinCom needs to vote the budget. Do they have a schedule to do that?
They don't yet, but that's clearly coming sometime.
So we're going to do that first, I guess.
Yeah.
Sure. We usually take the lead, so
Well, it seems like we're everyone on the same page, and we've had a lot of
it's their
discussion.
budget, but
It is their
we go
budget.
first.
Ideally, they would, raise their hands first, but if there's a discrepancy, we'll meet again. I presume they have a couple more meetings planned before town meeting.
Well, and it's obviously
But we also have to close the warrant.
Yeah, the plan is to close the warrant next
Next week.
Tuesday. It can certainly always be opened on the following Tuesday, just for that purpose, if need be.
Which we hope we don't have to do, but it's running really tight.
All right.
Okay,
thank you.
anything else on the budget? Anything else? If not, I will
set.
take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second the motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
See you Monday.
Monday night, 7:30
7:30, yep.
here.
Here.
And we look forward to some good discussion then, and